things is culminated by the fact that in all of this is coming at a time when the United Nations General Assembly established what it's called the Pact of the Future Agenda. Now, a lot of people will say, aren't there too many agendas? We have the Sustainable Development Goals that would expire really come 2030. There are several goals. In fact, even our nation here has what they call the renewed agenda goal, an agenda as well that we have to follow, and that's what we'll be discussing today. What are the youth voices? What are the contributions the youth of Nigeria's voices made to the Pact of the Future? How can we ensure implementation of this new pact that the United Nations General Assembly has once again come up with? How can you hold government accountable? Because it boils down to government at the end of the day. How would we celebrate Nigeria at 65 come next year? Would there be change in spite of this General Assembly? The hula baloo heads of state across the world attended this once again, making speeches and giving us hope again. But what would be different this time? That's what we'll be discussing on today's edition. It promises to be very interesting. As my guest is already seated, Mr. Daniel Black. You already know him. He's a regular here on the show. Daniel Black is the National Head Young African Leaders Initiative. Thank you so much for being part of the program.
Thank you, Joy, for always having me. It's always a pleasure having this conversation on national development with you.
National development, I must tell you. And happy Independence Day.
Yeah, I'd say thank you as a citizen. That really what I'd ask, are we actually independent? But that's a conversation.
I have seen very funny Independence Day questions and answers, and how people have taken it. Somebody said, we are indeed independent. I'm independent of government. I'm independent of government influence. Or in my life, I provide electricity. I walk on the roads to my home. I ensure that if I want water, I have to do a borehole. So
that begs my question. So the independence is a matter of context. It's very, very subjective. What is your own definition of independence? If it is the independence of the citizens from the government, I would say yes, we are truly independent. If we are talking about the independence of the country of Nigeria as a country, wow, that's also a very subjective question, depending on the sector you're talking about. And I would also say we need to, at some point, we need to ask, is Nigeria at 64 in country years? Is that a youth? Is that a young person? In country years, when we are comparing with countries of 300 years, of 200 years and above. So would we say Nigeria is still a toddler, is still a young person, is still a teenager in country years? Would have to analyze all that to really say if we are independent as per our level. You get?
Okay.
Yes.
Well, a lot of us have given ourselves a break and tell ourselves, we're only 64. And if you want to compare, very often you compare with America, you compare with Russia and other countries. We're talking 200 years. So yes, give Nigeria a break. But notice how it seems like in this conversation, the leaders are generally expressing hope and optimism and telling you that things are going to improve anytime soon. And it seems like there's this huge gap because at the other divide, you see,
the leaders are just being leaders. It is their job to continue to inspire hope. It is their job to continue to inspire direction. As a leader, at any point in time where you are not able to inspire in spite of the realities on ground, then you have lost your position as a leader. So I think they are just doing their job, and it is the job. So as they are doing their job to inspire hope, inspire direction, inspire movement, I think it is the job of the citizenry to also hold them accountable. So let's not fault them. It is their job. Any leader that comes out and throws his hand in despair and say, I don't know where we are heading to, it's not fit to be a leader. Right. At that juncture, he shouldn't even be a leader anymore. So for the fact that they still have the courage to inspire hope, in spite of what is going on, in spite of the conversations, of the realities on ground, they're able to inspire hope. They're able to say, I think this is where we should go to. Right. I think we should give them some kudos that they are very courageous. They have focus, and I think they have where they are going to.
Well, this optimism, I don't know if you're a leader at the moment, because this is exactly what the leaders have been saying. But we'll go for a short break. When we return, we'll talk about the fact that a lot of us are now back from New York. That's the United Nations General Assembly, 79. And that conversation that ensued there, what change can be made immediately to see that these are goals, this is an agenda, this is a pact that Nigeria wants to take seriously. What are the indicators to look out for? We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back from that. We have returned from the United Nations General Assembly 79. Our vice president, who represented our president, also had an opportunity to address the world, basically, because he was addressing all nations who were represented there. And while we will not go into that conversation, we would get into what was established there, the Pact of the Future agenda. And Daniel Black, as I said earlier, is still right here with us. He's the national head, YALI Network Nigeria. That's the Young African Leaders Initiative. It's good to have you, and it's good that you are right here. So I just mentioned the very many agendas Nigeria we have, the world has. The African Union also has agendas 2060. It seems like you get dizzy. Most of these are intertwined, meaning the goals are very similar. However, when we are still struggling to have people understand that we have moved from the Millennium Development Goals now to the Sustainable Development Goals, and here we are with another Pact of the Future that countries around the world must, at this moment, as it was even said during the UNGA, urgently start implementing. How serious do you think Africa would take this, especially Nigeria?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for having me and having this conversation with me. You know, over last week, it was a privilege to be one of the young people representing over 200,000 young people in Nigeria, or in YALI Network, and by extension, over 70% of the population of Nigeria. And we went there with one purpose: one, to go and listen in, to go and participate and get first-hand information of the happenings around the Pact of the Future. And I also want to add here that in the 79th United Nations General Assembly Summit of the Future, we had 3 outcomes: the Pact of the Future, the Digital Compact, and the Declaration for Future Generations. These 3 documents came out as an end goal of the Summit of the Future. And to also talk a little about the issue of many agendas and many agreements. You know, in project management, in the development space, we call it monitoring, learning, evaluation, and monitoring, evaluation, and learning, MEL. So monitoring, evaluation, research, and learning, MERL, it's a department on its own, where by the time a project kickstarts, there is a department, there is a committee or a team set up to ensure that there is compliance. And in the case of any deviation, in the case of any changes, there are modifications to the already made agreements and arrangements and project to ensure that the project is still in tune with current realities. Let's say you plan to finish maybe you plan to do a master's by the end of this year, right? And you have already applied for this, you've applied for that. And mid-year, there is probably a crisis. There is something that has stopped it. Or let's not even say crisis. Maybe something happens positively in your life that it needs you to stop that particular masters at a particular time. You see, so now you can't just continue blindly. You have to reevaluate and say, okay, do I have to pause this masters? If the target was 2025, do I have to push it to 2026 and all of that? So I believe that these new agendas are as a result of research and learning, monitoring, evaluation, research and learning of the previous agendas. Yes, there are many agendas in Nigeria. We have the Renewed Hope agenda. We have several agendas. We have the
Agenda
Sustainable Development
2050,
Goal, Agenda 2050, still in Nigeria. In Africa, we have Agenda 2063. Now, it is good that those responsible for implementing, those responsible for agreeing, committing to this agenda are consistently monitoring and evaluating and looking at how far so far. Okay, now that we have come this far, okay, so the Sustainable Development Goals were made and then there came COVID. The Sustainable Development were made and there came intense in climate change. The Sustainable Development Goals were made and there has been a widespread violence, right, and war across the countries. And I think it was time for them to say, or for us to come together and say, these were our agreements, but with the realities on the ground, with all the wars, with all the crises going on, with the climate change going on, with the food shortage going on, with the impending famine, with the COVID-19 setback that we had, where the world was set back by almost 4 or 5 years in terms of development, how can we reevaluate and ensure that we are in tune with current realities? And then I think that birthed the Pact for the Future. Going forward, what do we do? And if you take a critical glance into the Pact of the Future, you now see 5 major thematic areas
right,
that revolve around the future, revolves around the current realities. In the thematic area in the Pact of the Future, AI, which is a current trend, is emphatically mentioned. Closing the digital divide between the worlds.
Before we get into the 5 thematic areas of this Pact of the Future, I'd just like us to start with the fact that the Pact of the Future also emphasizes the need to accelerate progress for the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I mean, you were talking about monitoring, evaluation, research and learning, right? And my question would be, if we are still talking about reinforcing Sustainable Development Goals, why a new one? Because we don't think that certain organizations or certain governments across the world are taking the Sustainable Development Goals seriously. Now, recently, maybe that's a good thing per se, but we're hearing essays on SDGs across states. It's a good thing, probably. It should bring closer the need for governments to implement these goals and get relatable with it. But has it really worked? Do you think that bringing it to the fore of this Pact of the Future to say Sustainable Development Goals are still valid, we should reinforce implementation of it. It addresses a lot of issues that the world still faces. It addresses climate change. It addresses rather responsible governance. It addresses everything, really. Do you think it's that component is taken seriously? And if it were, 5 years to go, would we still need a Pact of the Future?
So let's get it clear here. The Pact of the Future is not coming to replace the SDGs. Rather, the Pact of the Future is making new agreements on how to better implement the SDGs, right?
Right.
So, if you now notice, you were there at the Summit of the Future, and you notice how there was emphasis on digital technology
right.
Incorporating digital technology in ways that we can achieve the SDGs. So the Pact of the Future came to say, guys, this is what we've been doing for the past years. Now we have 6 to 5 years remaining. How can we accelerate? How can we make this better? Bring in terms of ensuring that the youth are given meaningful engagement, ensuring that there is digital cooperation, ensuring that there is global compacting, there is covering the digital divide. So there's the global cooperation and security. So I think it is a very timely one. In fact, I'm thinking it is I would think it is late, but it's better late than never, where we have come to reevaluate our implementation strategies. Because the truth remains, if we continue the way we were, definitely 2030 is just a mirage, it's just a name. But if we are able to incorporate the changes, the agreements, the new methods that are incorporated in the Pact of the Future, then there is still hope. There is still a tinge of hope that the Sustainable Development Goals would have been achieved by almost 90%, if not 100%, by the set time and goal.
Well, simultaneously, we had the Climate Week,
Oh, yes, the New York Climate
the New York
Week.
Climate
Yes,
Week, which
yes.
was very interesting because those activities, those conversations around, climate adaptivity was really interesting. And
Sorry, did you notice that even in the Climate Week, it encompassed conversations in agriculture, in
exactly.
technology,
in food,
in finance and everything. So you see that the climate change conversation, it's an ecosystem on its own. It is affecting every facet of the economy, and every sector is trying to adapt. How can we adapt and ensure that the new climate reality, we are able to maximize it positively and reduce the negative effects?
Do you think some of those conversations were relatable to the African realities?
No, yes, so we had Africa-specific conversations.
Yes.
We had global-specific conversations, and yeah, some of them were relatable, while some were just mere recommitments to former commitments. But I think that I would never displace the place of continuous conversation. Those conversations, like the ones that were had by the Gabi, the Global African Business Institute. We had different conversations that held round, and we had forerunners in the African sector. We had the likes of Dangote, we had Okonjo-Iweala, we had so many people. We had Tony Elumelu come in and give their own perspectives in the different sectors for movement. And beyond Nigeria, we had different forerunners from Rwanda, from
all over the
world,
all
over Africa. It was a very interesting engagement. So I believe that these continuous conversations yield results. No matter how slow, no matter how small, there's a continuous increment in our goal. Like you just mentioned now, different governments are having SAs on SDGs, which is, I think, is a good thing in the right direction. It localizes implementation. It brings it no matter what, no matter how redundant or how slow whoever the SDG may be, but at least at some point you'll say, before the end of my tenure, I'd like to do something.
Right.
And before you know, that community, that environment that had prior to now not done anything, not had any government intentionality on SDGs, would have had at least 1%, 2%, 3%. And by the time you cumulate it, I think Nigeria will still also push further. I
mean, I had a beautiful conversation with one of the essays of the governor on SDGs who attended this UNGA.
Which governor?
I would rather not say. However, because I was a bit disappointed with that conversation, when I asked, I said, what would you, how would you measure the implementation of SDGs in your state and the receptivity of your governor when it comes to SDG implementation? And her response was that because SDG is so broad, it's difficult to have indicators and KPIs. So that took me aback.
Yes,
let me ask you now, right?
Good. So now you need to understand, like I keep saying, and when I was interviewed back in New York, I also brought this up, that one of the errors, one of the mistakes we did with the SDGs was that we did not carry out proper orientation, proper awareness. In fact, it is post-COVID that the awareness for the SDGs just came around. Most of the SAs, most of the people appointed to man the SDGs are battling to even understand the concept of the SDGs. They are battling to be able to break it down. They've seen 17 goals and they do not understand. But I put it to you that the SDGs in itself came complete. They have their own KPIs that can be adapted to local situations. They have their own indicators. It's a complete toolkit that anybody can pick up and run with, right? But the issue is the awareness, the understanding, the localization of each SDGs to the different local communities that are supposed to implement this. And that is what we at Yali and every other youth organization that was represented there are trying to stop. Where we want to ensure that Nigerian youths, Nigerian young people understand the concept of the Pact for the future as early on as the Pact was adopted. Right. We do not want to wait 5 years, 3 years into the line and we are now jumping into it when countries and when wars have gone further. The SDGs, almost 10 years passed before we were even able to grapple and understand how far so far. But with the Pact of the future, I believe if we are intentional about creating awareness, letting the masses, letting the citizenry understand their role in implementing, their role in ensuring the success of the Pact of the future, I think we would do more, and we will not have instances where people saddled with the responsibility of implementing the SDGs are feeling like that there are no KPIs and there are no indicators.
That was very sad. Now, back to the climate action, you know, there was that emphasis on climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies that must be adopted by countries. Now, would you say that Nigeria has the representatives or the delegates from Nigeria came back with something different? Did you get that vibe, like people would say? Because we have often criticized our political officials of going for events like this, come back and you do not see tangible difference in policies, in strategies to achieve some of those big words that were mentioned in such forums.
So I will not want to hold brief for government, because in the just concluded General Assembly of the United Nations, we had representation of Nigeria from different sectors. We had these young people, the CSOs, the NGOs. We had government representation. We had the private sector, the business representation. So all these people had their different sets of representation. For me, that went there, for the young people that I interacted with, there was massive direction. There was full out direction on what is to be done, right? How we can ensure, because climate change is real. The moment we begin to shift, in fact, if I did not take anything from the United Nations General Assembly, I took the fact that climate change is real, and the sooner we begin to take remedial steps, the sooner we begin to take proactive steps instead of reactive steps, the better for us, because even the most advanced countries are suffering from it. And in Nigeria, before even the summit, before even the United Nations General Assembly, we saw the implications of the climate change. There was massive flooding in Borno. There has been in this Nigeria this year, some part of Nigeria has been complaining of drought. There's no water, while some have been complaining of what do they call it? Flood, excess water. So you imagine in one geographical location there is disparity in climate realities. Then you understand that something is actually happening. So the world is taking active steps, and I keep saying, so many people argue that we are not contributors to greenhouse emissions. But you will understand that beyond greenhouse emissions, Nigeria, there is a whole lot of plastic pollution in Nigeria. There's a whole lot of soil degradation in Nigeria, and these are all contributors to climate change, to climate changes that are going on.
Not to get playful with this, but did you notice that every store had a paper bag?
Yes. So
there were no polythenes.
There were very little polythenes, very less polythenes.
I didn't even notice any.
Yes, because you stayed in the town part of New York. You stayed in the city New York. Every time you went
to buy anything, it was the coffee cups were made out of papers. The packs.
The customer bag, as we would call it.
The customer bag, as you would call it. Yes. But there was, what I just noticed was there was an intentionality when it comes to
so we instead of us focusing on the fact that we may not be major contributors of greenhouse emissions, there are other micro components to climate change, and we need to look at it. Plastic pollution is a major disaster, is a major crisis in Nigeria. Land degradation is a major deforestation is a major crisis in Nigeria, where estates are springing up left, right, and center, right?
And biodiversity
is being reduced to the barest minimum. So the moment we begin to, so back to your question, right? As an NGO, as a civil society practitioner, as a young person that went there to represent other young people, I took a whole lot of action points. I took a whole lot of direction for climate activity. I saw, like you've mentioned, the intentionality of private individuals in participating in the climate change activities. And I think I have an understanding of what better to do in improving on what we have already been doing. Right. And that is the direction for the future, ensuring that individuals, private sector, CSOs, we are more intentional, we improve, we do better on our climate change activities.
Speaking about climate change, I mean, you and I stumbled on those people who wore the climate awareness placards on themselves. Something as let me get relatable now. The choosing pinafore like. Whatever it was, a climate change awareness placard.
They wore it on themselves.
They wore it on themselves. They stood in the temperatures. I mean, the sun,
the weather,
and all of that.
The weather.
All trying to hit home. If that is brought to Nigeria, do you think it would achieve the goal? Because you notice that people did stop, have conversations. I'm sure everybody who stopped took something home, which was the intention. As busy as New York was, people took a moment. Would it work in Nigeria as a means of advocacy?
Now, when you say bring it, I don't think bring it would be the correct term.
Oh, well.
If you noticed, those people did it out of passion. Now, I stand to be corrected. But if you saw the caliber of people, if you saw these were elderly people. These were people that I believe are not people that would be induced by money, would not be used for political gain. They were doing this out of pure passion. So, yes, it is a method, and it attracted attention. It gave people more awareness on what is going on. Although it may be looked at as an extremist method, as a fanatical method, right? But I believe that it does not have to be brought. Nigerians have to wake up and be passionate. And
is it something you can do? I mean, I know how passionate you are about the climate. Would you wear a chosen kind of uniform? Stand in the rain, stand in the sun, hand out pamphlets and all?
That is the difference between me and them. I would come on TV. I would do it in a more impactful way, in a more spread way. So I would want to employ technology. I would want to use social media. I would want to use traditional media, because come on. If I stand at Wuse Market, how many people can I really reach out to? How many people can I really in a day? If I do that for one full week, morning till night, I will fall down and die.
Why?
Right?
Why would you fall down and die?
Because it is exhausting. Just the mere talking, just the mere argument. No. They are not more resilient, but their method, that is a method which I think may not go as far. That is a method. Even there, how many people do you think they spoke to? Let us say we had 1 million people come to New York City. How many people do you think that they reached out to by virtue of that method? But if they had gone on social media, if they had done targeting and then targeted people that are anybody that is talking about the UNGA, and they targeted their adverts, they targeted their sensitization, they would reach more people. So yes, I love their passion. I love how passionate and how fanatic they are about climate change. But I think there are better methods, there are better ways that those things could be done.
So let's move on now to youth engagement. That seems to be your turf, being that you're a young man and all, and heading a young leaders initiative. Now, this Pact of the Future agenda also highlights the crucial role of young people in driving change in different sectors, and I would like to ask, young people, we just talked about how exhausting it will be trying to even discuss climate change with people, but young people driving change when it comes to global issues like this, and especially global goals, and it would entail holding government accountable, intentionally pointing government to these goals and in the implementation of it. Sometimes I ask young people, how many times have you gone to the National Assembly for public hearings? And you hear them say, I have never done that. I'm not sure I will get entrance into it. But that's not true. If you want to get part of these conversations that affect your development, very often you have the opportunity. But do we have interested young people enough who would want to be part of global issues such as this?
Okay, so thank you, Joy. That's a very, very peculiar question that so many people would love to know about, right? So at Yali Network here in Nigeria, we had taken the step even before the summit. We wanted more young people to be interested. We wanted more young people to contribute to the conversations. There is a world conversation called Pact of the Future, and young people are here seated, and they are not part of it. They will only end up being either just beneficiaries or participants. So sometimes accidental, right? And so we decided to take it a notch higher by engaging, and then we had state by state round-up conversations where we moderated conversations around Pact of the Future, around the 5 thematic areas. And do you know what was shocking? The interest was so high. So we noticed that, number one, we have limited information for the young people, that by the time they got this information, young people gathered in different locations across the country, and they had intense conversations. They spoke about the different thematic areas. And then after we had the state-by-state round-up conversations, we came out at the national in August 25th. We came out in Akwa Ibom State, where we had young people from all over Nigeria come around. We had a general assembly, and we had young people give presentations in a diplomatic style, in a UN General Assembly simulation. We had people give presentations, people give recommendations, and that is what ended up in us producing this report called the Youth Voices What We Want Project Report. Now, this report is a compilation of all the contributions of young people. And I dare tell you that we did not have to compel, we did not have to push. The moment we just gave them the information, we told them the level, the capacity, the benefits they would get from contributing to conversations at Summit of the Future. We had young people very interested. We had people applying and saying, please choose me. I want to be a delegate to come and discuss about this. And we were able to have a very robust conversation. In this report, we have identified challenges why young people in Nigeria may not be able to key into the Pact of the Future. And we also have recommended solutions. What could be done to ensure that young people in Nigeria are able to actively participate in the implementation of the Pact of the Future. And it is my happiness to let you know that we were able to compile this report and present it to different stakeholders in New York. Every young person, every stakeholder that we met, everybody, any organization, any individual that was projecting the agenda of young people inclusivity, we were able to present to them. We met the likes of the former Prime Minister of Sweden, which we shared this report with her. We met the person organizing small and medium scale enterprises in the UN. We shared this report. We shared it with several other people, even people from back home. We met the Mandate Secretary of the FCT, the Minister for Youth, so many key stakeholders for young people. We were able to share this report with them. And that was a first step to showing that we have what to say.
Right.
That was a first step to showing that we have an opinion. And it was also surprising to me the reception of these different stakeholders to a report by young people was so beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just felt if young people could talk more, could participate more, could contribute more, their voices, their opinions will be heard more. So that was more like a morale booster to me, to continue to engage, to continue to encourage and inspire young people to contribute to global and national discourse. Even at the local level, they make sure that they are intentional, they get up, because it took a whole lot of reading, it took a whole lot of research, it took a whole lot of breakdown to bring this information down to the young people for them to awaken their interest, right. Awaken their curiosity and their creativity to contribute to this. So yes, I think young people are ready to contribute if given the chance. Young people are ready to participate if given the table. But like we heard severally at the New York, don't wait to be given the table.
Build one.
Bring your chair. Right. Either you build one
or bring your chair.
And you build a table that is very valuable that other people want to sit there. Or if there is a table that you must be there, build your chair and bring it. Create a space and sit at that table.
Exactly. But it's time to go for a short break and take a breather. When we return, we're still discussing so much. This Pact of the Future has so much. It talks about health and well-being, gender equality, it talks about economic resilience, so much to discuss. So we'll be right back to discuss some more. Daniel Black is still right here. Welcome back from that short break. We're still discussing the Pact of the Future, youth voices, what we want, that contribution that members across the cohorts across Nigeria, that's members also of the Yali Network Nigeria had in terms of contribution to this pact as to what Nigerian youth really want, something that would bring about the change that we need so badly. We will get into that document right now. I just said Dr. Black.
I receive it.
Daniel Black is still right here, National Head, Yali Network. I mean, I don't know why I'm calling you doctor, but...
like I said, I receive it.
So this document that you have right now, is it something that aligns with the Pact of the Future? And I would like to also add if it's going to end up some sort of agenda, youth voices agenda that you would like government to adopt.
No. So the Youth Voices What We Want report is more of a support document for the Pact of the Future. Now, this document has analyzed the Pact of the Future, and like I said, there are two components to it. What are the identified challenges that will not allow young people in Nigeria to thrive with reference to the Pact of the Future?
Right.
And then we've also had identified solutions. How can we solve these problems and young people can be able to contribute and participate in achievement of the Pact of the Future, right? So it is not an agenda that needs to be adopted separately. It is just a support document that governments, CSOs, private institutions should be able to pick up, read it, and have better frameworks for engaging young people. You will bear me witness, we are there, different sectors, everybody is now talking meaningful youth engagement. It has shown that you will not be, the Pact of the Future, it has been agreed that it cannot be achieved without engagement of young people. And just like a very funny data that I got, and yeah, I verified, and it's true. You understand that 70% of Nigeria's population is young people.
Right.
And then somebody now said, if you remove these young people and create a different country for them, they would still form the highest, one of the biggest countries in Africa and in the world, right? So these are people you cannot ignore. And then this document embodies how they feel they could contribute, how they feel they could, first and foremost, they've identified the things hindering them. These people that you cannot ignore, these people that you must work with, these people that have the creativity and are ready to work with, they have in these documents told you how best to engage them, right? And I think this document is a document that should go around with, like I said, in both in e-copy and in soft copy. We have shared it to necessary stakeholders, but we are also requesting that more, it should go far and wide. It should guide Nigerian government. It should guide private sector parastatals. It should guide CSOs in their youth engagement frameworks on how to engage young people, because you can't just be planning for us. This is us telling you this is how you should plan for us. And I think if the recommendations in this document are accepted and used and utilized, I believe me that we will have a faster, accelerated implementation of both the SDGs and the Pact of the Future. So yeah, the document is not an agenda that needs to be adopted separately. It's just a document that needs to help support the implementation of especially in Africa.
Okay, so let's talk about the Pact of the Future. I mean, it underscores the importance of transparent monitoring and evaluation. Do we have mechanisms to track the progress and hold government accountable? I mean, when I talk about this, I can't help but chuckle, especially because we're talking Nigeria, where sometimes these mechanisms are greeted with some sort of skepticism, some sort of even attack. Sometimes it seems like you are coming to indict government when you hold them accountable, when you call out flaws in procurement and government projects, basically.
Yes. So if you listened to the Vice President's speech at the General Assembly, it was, I would say, in my opinion, it was a beautiful speech, well outlined, and commitments clearly stated as to how Nigeria wants to contribute, wants to integrate into the Pact of the Future. So the question now we'll talk about, so to answer your question directly, yes, I think we have the metrics have been outlined, the commitments have been made, our interest points have been identified. The question now is, do we have the political will to achieve this? Do we have the transparency and the moral standing to be able to achieve these commitments?
Shouldn't it be backed especially by citizens' interest and participation in all of this? Because I don't think any government would sit up if we do not have active citizens.
So that is bringing it back home, right? Like I said, at the General Assembly, we had clearly outspotted, clearly outlined what we want to do, how we want to come in and all that. Now, bringing it back home, yes, it is the young people, CSOs, private individuals, they have a role to play. And that is where the sensitization and awareness comes into play. All the people that represented from government, private, CSOs, they have a role to create a massive awareness of what the Pact of the Future is, because what you cannot track what you don't know about.
Exactly.
So we need people to know what it entails. Right. What have we committed to? What did we say we will do? And then we'll be able to, from there, we will now be able to have independent monitoring frameworks being set up to ensure independent contributory frameworks, because it is not just to monitor the government. It's also individuals have a role to play. When government is doing this, what are the complementary efforts that individual citizens need to do? And then to complement and ensure that there is a success. So, and this cannot happen if the citizenry do not know what it is about. So the few of us that were privileged to be part of the conversation in New York have the moral obligation to ensure massive step down. If we can do a step down at local government level, 774 local governments, do a step down, bring the young people and tell them, guys, this is what has gone on at the global level. This is how to do it. This is where to come in. This is how to hold government accountable. And then this is how you too can contribute to this. I think we will have a very fantastic implementation. So yes, it should be backed by citizenry, it should be backed by monitoring and evaluation. But first and foremost, the citizens cannot monitor, the citizens cannot hold accountable what they don't understand. So we should work on making them understand what the Pact of the Future is all about. You
know, behind the scenes, you and I were just talking about how voluminous it is. You know, when you look at 17 SDG goals, it's easy to even cram. You know, there are 17, and there are little conversations around how to implement them. But we're talking a 50-page document.
So, Joy,
who should do what in stepping down? Would you say that it should be separated in facets, in categories? Maybe talking about climate change, the
Joy,
ministry takes it over.
Joy.
How do you see the step down?
Appropriately, Dr. Joy. Let me use a religious analogy. You're a Christian, right? Yes. Okay. Do you remember how many pages the Bible is? About
don't do that to me.
Hold on. No. I just want to do an analogy.
Put me on the spot. This is my turf. Don't do that to me. I ask the questions.
Fine, great. Okay, I've answered about 3,000 plus pages, right?
Right.
Now, you notice that there are children's Bible that has been broken down. You do not know children's Bible. All right. So where I'm heading to
stop this.
Where I'm heading to is that we can break down everything, no matter how voluminous the document is.
Whose responsibility is that?
So we have development education specialists. It could be the government intentionally breaking down the Pact of the Future in how do they call it now? In graphics designs, in videos, so people could talk about it in videos just like we are talking about it. People could talk about it in cartoons. People could talk about it. When there is an intentional method to intentionality to create awareness, we can break it down into indigenous languages. We can break it down into infographics. We can break it down into data. Right?
Right.
So government has a role to play in this awareness. So when we say awareness is a multifaceted, a multisectorial, a multi-method kind of project, right? It's not just doing press releases, right? So we can create pamphlets, we can create cartoons, we can create documentaries, we can create breakdowns, several infographics, right, about Pact of the Future, just like it was done at the early stage for the SDGs, right?
Even in the MDGs.
Even the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals.
Millennium Development Goals had in billboards. So it was difficult to miss.
It was difficult to miss. So we need to carry out a very intense awareness method both local and traditional media, both digital media, every form of media, every form of education. In fact, it would not be out of place if the NYSC instituted a Pact of the Future orientation in their orientation camp. If we had the Ministry of Education sending out trainee teachers, these teachers that go on trainee, and then giving them a special topic on Pact of the Future, that all the SS1 to SS3, as you're going for your, what do they call it, practicum, for that these teachers go to, as you're going for it, this is one special topic, whether you're teaching biology, English, mathematics, as a copper going to a secondary school, or as a teacher in training going to secondary school, you're supposed to teach them about Pact of the Future. Right. It would not be out of place if we have a radio radio program, just like we have in religious sectors, where by 12 o'clock some radio programs pray and all that. We have a radio program every morning. If different TV channels begin to say, we will give 10 minutes, dedicate 10 minutes of our airtime every day to breaking down the Pact of the Future, right? If all hands come on deck. So if you notice that this thing is a multifaceted, everybody, all hands come on deck, the private sector, the government media, everybody comes hands on deck.
I was just about to cut you to say, you seem to be pushing much responsibility on awareness within the citizens, and this is a pact that if only government drives, the citizens would benefit, like we said, maybe accidentally, but it needs government's intentional political will. So when you put so much responsibility on citizens, getting to know what it is, getting to understand
Dr. Joy, we can't be doing one thing the same way and expecting a different result.
Right.
Our government has been aware of the SDGs over the years.
Right.
They have, in quotes, done, in quotes, their part.
Okay.
Why the SDGs, in my opinion, has not gone so far is because the citizenry have not done their part. The SDGs has constantly been seen as an elitist and a money-spinning agenda. Young people, when you talk about no poverty, right, there has been no, people design programs, you see people go and collect poverty subsidies, collect grants, and are not intentional about using it for the purpose it was meant for. Continuous diversion of these grants, right? And you keep on finding that, oh, there is so much grant, there's so much aid coming to the African continent, but the KPIs to see an increase in livelihood, the impact, are not showing, because one party is playing its part. May not be 100%, maybe just 10% of its part, but there is another party that is not even playing a 0%. And I tell you that if we had a proper reception of the different roles of implementing the SDGs, we would go further. If we stopped waiting for it to be a government role, a government thing, right? So I think at this juncture, yes. And when you say I'm giving more role on the citizenry, remember, the person that is a president is also a citizen of Nigeria. He will not be blind to all the awareness going on. So it is, that awareness covers everybody, both the people in government who are also citizens and the private citizens. And at least everybody will be on the same page. This is what this is about, and this is how I can play my role. Government's job is to find investors. Government's job is to make a favorable environment. Government's job is to ensure that the grants, the World Banks invite them and ensure that, attract them is the word now, attract investors, attract funders, create a favorable environment for these things to thrive, right? The private sector is to ensure that whatever is being done, there's a sustainability component. Imagine a community where government, in the guise of sustainable development goals, comes to create a borehole, and then the community does not take ownership of that borehole, and then the youth are the ones pilfering from that borehole. The youth are the ones selling components of the transformer. The youth are the ones negotiating with contractor to reduce the quality of roads. Shortchange themselves. So you find out that they are not doing their part. If we understood that the sustainable development goals, when government brings, it is my job to ensure sustainability, ensure continuity, ensure quality, you will have a check and balance. Communities will begin to set up a quality monitoring units. That is their role. That the person that is coming to do road, courtesy of sustainable development goals, is doing it in consistency with the length, is consistency with the quantity, in consistency with everything, and quality. You understand what I'm saying? So I believe awareness, when I say awareness, it is not just to the young, it's not just to the citizenry. Everybody is a citizen. We need to begin to understand that even the permanent secretary of a ministry, the governor, the local government chairman, the councillor, the House of Reps member, these are still human beings. These are still citizens, as you would call them, in as much as, yes, they are in the government. So if there is an intentional awareness, everybody will benefit from it.
And I mean, it should be simultaneous. Thank you so much for that. I mean, we have reflected on the takeaways from the comprehensive approach to the global challenges we face. That's the Pact of the future. The youth voices what we want as well. We've talked about the sustainable development goals as well. Happy Independence Day, Nigeria. Again, I thank you for watching. And Daniel Black, thank you for spending this hour with us here.
Is it up to an hour already?
It is up to an hour. Thank you for spending this hour with us.
Thank you for always having me.
Yes, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone. This is where we draw the curtains on the program. Rest assured, we'll be back with so much more. Have a restful evening.